This tutorial will present Esping-Andersen's typology of welfare states. I'm going to start with first just contextualizing what the state of the art was when he presented his work, and then I'm going to go through just how he thought about how we can classify welfare states. So first then, before he presented his work, and this is just to give you a sense of how significant this work really was for research. The field of the welfare state research in those days was characterized to some extent by a lack of theory. There were three main ways to talk about the welfare state. First, you had some Marxist explanations, scholars discussing how the state as an actor functions within capitalism, and many would argue then that the welfare state legitimized capitalism. So the debate was between them and is the state actually a progressive force, something that can be used to harness the problems inherent with capitalism as Marxists saw it. And that was really the big debate within that stream of literature. A second stream of literature here concerned rational choice theories, and this was, we know this also as public choice theory. Discussions about how the relation between politicians and administrations and civil servants and how those relations work and what affects those relations, who's really in power, is it the minister, is it the senior civil servant, and so on and so forth, and what affects the decision making of these particular actors within the framework they're in. And then, of course, there's institutionalism, where you'll find all these organizational maps and flow charts, you know, what are the hierarchies going on, and so on. So in that sense, Esping-Andersen, when he presented his typology, it really filled a type of theoretical void, in the sense that he offered a way for scholars to categorize the welfare state model as a whole in relation to each other, and just how great that impact was on the research can be seen from just how much have come out of his, and how many scholars have built on his research. So there's actually has been quite, certainly during the 90s, just after he published his work, a great many studies published where scholars and researchers engage with this model and are discussing how many types of welfare states are there really. So you'll find additions of a Mediterranean type to the three he already presents, and that I'll discuss shortly, and so on. So there's a great body of literature coming out of this, suggesting that his contribution was found to be a really significant one. So what is he saying to us, Esping-Andersen? Well, he is saying that there's really three classical types of welfare state models out there. First is the liberal Anglo-Saxon poverty relief state. The second is the German Christian democratic state, and the third is the Scandinavian model of universality, where, and I quote, all strata are incorporated under one universal insurance system. That's the three, and this is Esping-Andersen here. That's the three main types. And there are three interacting factors going into determining how these have come to existence. First is the nature of class mobilization, particularly the working class. The second concerns class and political action structures, which is related to the first. And the third has to do with the historical legacy of regime institutionalization. And so this, I've written here that the model suggests path dependency. And this means that once a particular coalition of groups, class coalitions, and particular institutional setup has come into being, this will really constrain and affect the scope for possible political action for the future. So once a country has a particular welfare type, a particular model of a welfare state, it will be really difficult to kind of break the mold and anything that you do within that model will be informed by what has happened before. This is not to suggest that you can't ever change a style of governance, but it is suggesting that you have to work with a new government coming in has to work with the deck of cards that they've been dealt by the former government, to use a colloquial expression. Also, it really impacts political culture, because if we look at these three different models of welfare state, there is a profound difference in perspective on how welfare should be done. So who should do welfare service delivery? Should it be the state, the NGOs, the market? And I have some examples here. So in Anglo-Saxon states, it's common to give NGOs a role in service delivery. In the US, healthcare has been largely a matter of the private sphere, private market, insurance companies. In Scandinavia, you will find that it's very common to let service delivery rest with the state. Connecting back to the three types, I mentioned Germany as one type of welfare state, and their Christian organizations tied to organized Christianity have been heavily involved in service delivery in the health sector as well. So how do we classify these different welfare systems? Well, first, this is what Esping-Andersen tells us. There is the degree of decommodification to think about. And this can be, there are two traits going into this. First, is this social service rendered as a matter of right? And second, can a person maintain a livelihood without reliance on the market? If these two can be answered in the affirmative, then there is a strong degree of decommodification going on. The second has to do with the kind of social stratification and solidarity is going on. That's Esping-Andersen's argument. So which social stratification system is promoted by social policy, and does the welfare state build narrow or broad solidarities in society? In other words, how much buy-in do you have from, in the welfare state, do you have from the people, and from what people? If we look class-based, which is what Esping-Andersen does, which classes are invested in the welfare state? So using those two criteria, then Esping-Andersen talks about these three different types, because he argues he can see these very strong systematic structures going into them. So the first then is the social democratic Scandinavian type with high decommodification. In other words, there's a strong sense of social rights, strong universalism, strong sense of being able to get your livelihood without relying on the market, and a strong universalism meaning that most classes have bought into the welfare state. So there has been, the regime has then been able to build solidarities throughout society. The second is the liberal Anglo-Saxon style, which has low decommodification. In other words, there isn't this sense that social rights are terribly strongly entrenched. And there is also a strong individualistic self-reliance in this tradition. And then finally, there's the conservative Central Europe. This is the German type, corporatist and statist. So there is a degree of class alliances in the sense of corporatist, the corporatist networks, which do embrace both employers and labor unions, but decommodification is comparatively modest. This concludes the short tutorial on Esping-Andersen. I've discussed the context in which he presented his work and just the basics of how he thinks about the three welfare types. Hope you found that useful.